Hey everybody, I'm Mike Settele, the founder of Settele Tutoring, and this is yet another episode of Name That Strategy, where I go through 10 math questions, 10 random questions, and just kind of let you see into my brain about the first steps that I would do, the first thoughts that I would have about encountering these questions if I saw them on a test. It's a great way to give you practice recognizing when to use the three main math strategies: guess and check, arithmetize, and plug points into equations. But before we begin, just remember, please subscribe to this channel. To put it simply, the more subscribers I have, the more videos I can make, and that means the higher your score. So make sure that you subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe, and also make sure you visit my website, setteletutoring.com. At setteletutoring.com/library, we have all the free resources, some quizzes that you can take to help you with the math sections, as well as the reading and the writing. I also have my SAT Packets study guides, which you can purchase as a way to improve your scores, fix your weaknesses, and remember, my explanations always focus on the strategies so that you have new habits, new ways of approaching these questions. So without further ado, we're going to start out, but just remember, I am not going to solve any of these questions completely. The solutions are in the description. I have links to videos that actually go through the details to solve. The purpose of this lesson is just to see what your first initial reaction should be to a math question, so that way you can just get the ball rolling, get started, and use the strategies to solve. All right, let's get to it. Let's see what we got. First question. Oh boy. All right, this is definitely a mess. I can see that the story is going to be crazy, so my first instinct is I don't want to deal with this story, but I also see that they're providing equations for me in the answer choices. I don't want to have to plug anything in here. It's a little crazy. The numbers look messy, they look big, but instead, all I need to do is start comparing the differences. This is absolutely a guess and check mentality question. I'm going to look for differences in the choices, and I'm going to go into the story looking to check whether it's one thing or another. So just to give you some examples here, right? X plus Y, does it equal 5,276, or does X plus Y equal 163? I would go into the question, try to figure out what X is, try to figure out what Y is, and see which number in the story is going to match with that value, right? I can already see that both of those numbers are there. Remember, if you for the full solution, use the description. I've got all the videos in there, but this is at least the first step, is thinking backwards through the question. Here's another one where I'd probably do the same thing. So long story, but notice the answers are really simple. So this is probably another guess and check. I might try to see if there's something about these answer choices that I can use. The maximum number of small cakes that can be made with the remaining eggs to fulfill the order. So if I were guess and checking, I would start with 12 because that's the maximum value that I'm presented with, and I would see if that works. I would try to work backwards. Again, maybe it gets messy, maybe it doesn't work, but if you are looking at this and you are confused, this is better than nothing, is to at least have some number to latch onto and start working backwards with. What do I do with the small cakes? I don't know. It looks like small cakes require 9 eggs per cake, so maybe multiply 12 and 9. Again, for full explanation, go to the description. But first step, you got to start thinking backwards when you see a question that's like 10 lines long. You got to think backwards. Okay, here I already know just from experience that this question is going to be testing unit conversion. So for me, there's probably not like an overall strategy that I'm going to need to follow other than show your work. Even though it's the calculator section, and I'm going to be putting a lot of numbers into my calculator to do the actual calculations, everything I put in my calculator, I'm going to be writing on my page as well. I need another check. It's basically just a way to be careful because the SAT is really good at making the wrong answers, the kind of thing you would get if you made a very common mistake. So we might get a wrong answer and never know because we're really confident in our work that we did in the calculator. We trust that machine too much. So I'd be showing my work on the page as a way to just be careful and, you know, make sure I don't make the mistake, or if I do, I catch it more easily. So this is a real thing. You know, you need to know on the SAT when your work is really important and when a careless mistake is going to cost you the most. And so anything with unit conversion, I'm really nervous, and so I'm going to be really cautious. Okay, love it. We've got points. What else do I see? We got points. Do I have an equation? It doesn't look like it. Let me read the question and see. Line M in the xy plane is the slope of 2 and passes through that point. Second line K. Okay. Yes. So without actually doing all the solving, I'm going to know to use my plug points into equations. Ooh, that's a messy E. Equations strategy. Now, obviously, we have points. Like I said, they're right here. Very obvious. So where am I getting an equation? I can look at this. I don't see one. Well, they're talking about lines. They're giving me slopes. They're giving me points. Very high probability that I'm going to make my own equation. And I'm going to follow the y equals mx plus b format because it's a line, and that's kind of my safe formula for a line. It's the one I understand. It involves slope, it involves intercepts, and I can plug points into it. So this happens with plug points into equations. I think we sometimes get it in our heads that we need both of those things. We need to be given a point, we need to be given equations, but not always. Sometimes we do get both of those things. It's really obvious. But even when I see half of that strategy, I only see the points. I only see the equations. My brain is still thinking strategically about it. And I'm like, okay, can I come up with the other thing? If I have equations, maybe there's a point on a graph or a point in the story that I can kind of compose. And so now I have a point to plug into the equations. In this case, it's kind of the more rare situation where I'm given points, but not equations. But I can easily generate those equations because I'm comfortable with y equals mx plus b and I'm given lots of information. So I would write y equals mx plus b on my page and start filling in the letters that I know. So this is definitely a gettable question, even though it looks a lot confusing here. Like, you gotta recognize, if you've got points, your first step is probably to make some equations. All right, let's see. What is this one about? I see equations again, so that might be another plug points into equations, but let's see. And the system of equations above is graphed in the xy plane. The graphs of the equations intersect at that point. What is the y coordinate? Yep, this is definitely plug points into equations. I could do it again. Now, in this case, there is some, algebra that you can do to solve. Some people are really confident with that algebra. That's okay. But I would try to plug the points in if I were not confident, because I don't want to make a mistake. And they are very clearly giving me 1/2, the y half, of a point. You can plug in partial points. That's absolutely possible. If I were to do that, I would end up with an x that I need to solve for, but then I'd have the full point once I solve for it. So just to kind of show you, if I chose like choice D here, that's the coordinate of y. So I would go to the easier equation. 16 is equal to x squared. That means that x is either plus or minus 4. It could be either. Well, actually, no. It can only be plus 4 because of the question. So right away, I just went from having a random answer choice, a random 16, interpreting what that meant. It's half of a coordinate, and then I can solve very quickly for the other half. So now I can really just continue with the plug points into equations and plug that point into this other equation and test it out. There you go. Even places where it doesn't look like you got points, they sometimes do. All right, in this one, I don't know what's going on. Geometry, not as heavy on strategies. Sometimes we just got to memorize the facts or go to the reference chart at the beginning. All right, what do they want? In this figure above, AB is tangent. That's important to the circle with point at O. Which of the following is true about the value of x? Oh, this is just a memorized question. Sometimes there is no strategy other than do your homework and memorize the facts that you need to memorize. This one is not given to you in the reference chart. We need to know that a tangent line, so in this case line AB, glances the circle, right? It just touches it at one point. And the reason that's really important is that tangent lines are going to be perpendicular to radiuses. So in this case, these two red lines are forming a right angle, so this is just a matter of knowing that definition of a tangent, so you can pick this. These are cases where, if you don't know the fact, there is no strategy that can save you. You are just kind of stuck. And this is why, use my website. I've got a lot of resources. I've got quizzes on formulas and things that you need to memorize, because this is the kind of thing that if you don't have that fact memorized, you just gave away 10 points for no good reason. It's a quick 10 points if you've memorized it. Okay, right away, what do I see? I see an equation of sorts, an equation at the top. I see kind of equations in the choices. Now, maybe do I want some points? Yes, I do. Where do I get them from? Well, there's no other information in the question, and so that means I'm going to use this little spin on the plug points into equation strategy. I'm going to arithmetize. I'm going to make up my own point for x and plug it in. So this should be an obvious arithmetized question. We have a crazy looking thing at the top. We have x's in the crazy looking thing and in all of our answer choices. At no point in this question are we being told to solve for x. If x just carries through, it probably means we can make it up and do whatever we want with it. So I might pick something here like 0, since that's a really easy number to work with, and I would test that number out and put it in the original equation, put it in the choices, see which ones get me the same value. This is a classic arithmetize. You have to be able to recognize that you should be arithmetizing here really, really quickly. You shouldn't be staring at this for a while, wondering what to do. If you are wondering, that is your brain's way of telling you that you don't know what to do and you need to think of a strategy. And anytime the algebra looks confusing or the x's don't seem to matter, make them up, see what happens. Okay, in this case, all right, this is a good example where a strategy might not quite work. I do have an equation, right? So can I plug points into equations? Well, in this case, it seems like no. And it's because they're asking for the specific value. So I can't make up my own x like I did before. Maybe I can guess and check. Not really in this case, though, because of this little trick that they did here, where they made our answer choices weird. I just want to compare. I'm going to scroll back to this one, where our answer choices were really clear in the question. They were the y coordinate. That's a simple thing, right? We can just plug that in for y, very easy to work with. Here, it's x plus y. And so, for example, like choice A, what is some possible values? Well, it could be that x is 0 and y is 3, or it could be that x is 1 and y is 2, or it could even be that x is -10 and y is 13. You see, there's unlimited possibilities. I don't know the individual values of x and y, so I can't really guess and check here. This is just to say that we're going to need to kind of just do some traditional algebra for this. That happens sometimes. Simplify some radicals. Something's going to line up. All right. Here we have another geometry question, and it has trigonometry, so I might write SOHCAHTOA on my page just to get it out of my brain and onto the paper. In this case, though, I will say there is going to be a fact that we need to memorize here. Again, the video explanation should go into it, but basically it's very easy to draw triangles if you need to picture what's happening, right? So if you have a geometry question without a picture, probably that's going to be your first step. Draw something out. Try to get a sense of what they're saying. That way you can see it more clearly. It's better to have ideas come out of your brain and onto the page, so that way your brain now has room for new ideas. So always draw when you have geometry. And speaking of geometry, this is a nightmare. Anytime I see hexagons, I know it's going to be a pain. They do not give us the formulas for hexagons at the beginning of the section, so I'm going to have to improvise. I will say that from experience, I know that a hexagon is basically a bunch of 30, 60, 90 special triangles. And the reference chart does give us information about that. And so when you have a hexagon, you're almost always going to be dividing it like a Crunchwrap Supreme from Taco Bell, my favorite food. And then you're going to divide each of those triangles, which is an equilateral triangle, you're going to divide it into a 30, 60, 90. So you're going to work within this little tiny triangle and then multiply to get the big thing. So I will say that that is something right away I would know because I've had experience with SAT hexagon questions, and that's just kind of how we have to do it. But I do want to point out one other thing. All right, I wouldn't be just thinking of this as a, geometry, algebra, memorize some formulas kind of question. It is not. There is a strategic element to this. Notice that they are telling me that the value of the side is A. and then A appears in all of my choices as A. I am never asked to solve for A. Well, that means A by itself doesn't matter. And so what I would do from the start is pick a number, probably something like 2, to use as my value of A as I do all the other calculations. Why? Because I just said the calculations are going to be really, really hard. Do you really want to be doing hard calculations and then be dragging this variable through them? No. You have a calculator as well, so let the calculator do stuff. It can't do stuff if you give it a variable, an unknown value. But if you give it a number, it can do its thing. So if I pick a value like 2, I'll solve whatever the question wants me to solve, and then use that 2 at the end to see which answer choice also gives me that same value. And I would pick 2 here instead of the normal x equals 1 that I choose, because I see, I'm thinking ahead, I look at the answer choices and I see in 2 of them, I am dividing by 2. And so for the sake of, thinking about what might happen in this equation, I'm like, oh, maybe at some point I'm going to need to divide by 2, and it would be much easier to divide 2 by 2 than 1 by 2, right? I'd rather not have a fraction if I can avoid it. So there's a lot of thinking that goes in. This is still, even with arithmetize, this is still going to be a very difficult question. But anything that we can do to lower the chance of a careless mistake and to raise the chance that we can just push through the difficult steps, that is worth doing. That is how we get more of these really, really tricky ones right. You're going to see a wide variety of tricky ones. No 2 SATs are the same. But what they are the same about is how you cleverly turn the tricky ones into easier things. And arithmetize, guess and check, and plug points into equations are your best friends. No matter how good you are at math, they are going to make questions easier and make you less prone to mistakes. It's all about avoiding algebra and working with numbers whenever we can. Why make your life more complicated in a case like this when it's already complicated? Use the strategies, simplify your life, improve your score. Well, I hope this was helpful and it gave you some insight on how I think about the test and when you can use the strategies. The best way to get better at using the SAT math strategies is to take SAT math practice sections and do more practice questions. And the best way to do that is to subscribe to the Settele Tutoring channel and visit my website. I post questions of the day, I make longer lessons, and I have video explanations of every question from the official SAT practice test. So you will always know when a strategy is the right move because I will explain it and do it. So please subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them. If you like the video, like the video. If I get enough likes, I will make more. If I know that these are helping, I know to make more stuff like this. So please, your feedback is really helpful. Thanks for watching.